This morning, if you will turn in your Bibles, actually, just hold on. I'm going to the book of Job. Go ahead and look at the reference on the screen here. That's the reference this morning, is the book of Job. By the way, that's 42 chapters long. So we're going to be here a minute because that's the passage I'm preaching from, is the book of Job today. I want to highlight one of my personal favorite people in the Old Testament today. And most people who've grown up in church are familiar with the story of Job. You know, we understand that, it's good that Job got that job because none of us would have wanted that job. You know, none of us would have signed up to be Job, but we understand who Job is. The young man I want to highlight is not Job, though, but he is found in Job's story. I want to bring out this person. If you're not familiar with the story of Job, I'm going to highlight throughout the book of Job what's going on here. We're going to take the highlight version rather than read the book of Job, especially if it's your first time here, like, oh my goodness, that pastor stood up there and read 42 chapters of the Bible to us. I don't know if I can do that every week. Don't worry, we're not going to do that. I'm going to break the book of Job down quickly this morning, but there's a lot to it. So I want to go ahead and get into it because there is quite a bit. We're going to be looking at a lot of verses, but I want to give everybody the gist of what Job is all about, and I want to focus on this one guy in Job. Now, I do recommend going home and reading the book of Job. Yes, it is 42 chapters long, but there's so much we're not going to be able to touch on today. So go ahead and read it. It is a story. It's not like, it's not like one of those books of the Bible where you see these things and you're like, okay, I can apply that verse to my life, and I don't really understand what's going on here, but that's a good verse. You can read the whole book of Job. It's like reading a book, It's like, it's his story, and it's awesome. So I do recommend going home and reading that, but hopefully I can at least give you a teaser of what it's about, so when you're reading it, you're like, I can see how it's all connecting. So let's go ahead and just go to the very first verse of the book of Job here. It starts with the summary of who Job is. So Job chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright and one who feared God and shunned evil. This was a man who truly was pleasing to the Lord. His life was right. He did a good job in his existence. He's pleasing to the Lord. Satan saw the character of man that Job was, and he devises a plan to destroy Job. Satan comes up with an idea, which, by the way, happens a lot. He comes up with this idea: I want to completely destroy this guy. The Bible says that Satan approaches God, and he tells God, hey, I've been walking around the earth. I've been roaming the earth. So Satan approaches God and says, hey, God, I've been going to and fro along the earth. And God knows Satan's heart, and he cuts right to the chase, kind of interrupts Satan. Like, okay, I know why you're here. Look at verse 8. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil? Satan doesn't waste any time here. He realizes that God's on to him, so he immediately starts pleading his case. So Satan just walks up to God, hey, so I've been walking around the earth. Thinking about Job? Oh, he's on to me. He's on to me. He knows I came here about Job. Man, I thought I could pull one over on the all-knowing God, but it didn't work that way. He kind of knew. So he says, are you thinking about Job? Like, yeah, I've been thinking about Job. So he doesn't just say, yeah, I've been thinking about Job. No, he decides to plead his case because, well, God's already on to him. So he actually presents a fairly decent argument. Good job, Satan. In my logical thinking, I look at him and go, he's got a point here. So let's look at his argument. Job chapter 1 and verse 9. So Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now, stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. He tells God the only reason that Job is the kind of man he is because of how good God's been to him. You've blessed him. Of course he loves you. Of course he's going to live for you. Of course he's going to do what you want him to do. Look what you did. You've blessed him on every side. Why would he ever turn on you? Here's the challenge. Go ahead and take away his blessings, and see if he doesn't curse you to your face, God. That seems like a logical argument. You know, if your boss says, if you go into work tomorrow and your boss says, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and start paying you, I don't know, $10,000 an hour. Are you good with that? Does it matter how bad your day is at work? Like, I don't care what my day is like. Every hour that goes by, I get another $10,000. I'm going to stay with this guy. I'm going to work for this person forever and ever because the benefits are really good. This is the case that Job is putting out, or that Satan's putting out there. Of course he's going to stay with you. Of course he's going to serve you. Look at the benefits you give him. You treat him so well. But if you were to take those benefits away, let's say you go to that same job tomorrow that you were making $10,000 an hour, and the boss says, by the way, 75 cents an hour from here on out. Like, I'm job hunting. I'm not going to stay with you anymore because you took the blessing away from me. That's what Satan's case is, and it does sound pretty logical. It sounds pretty logical. So God opens up the opportunity for Satan to move. He's like, all right, I'll play. The sad part is Job's the one that Job's the object of affection here. Satan's like, I'd like to attack him. And God says, oh no, he's a good man. Like, yeah, he's only a good man because you give him good things. So God's like, all right, let's go ahead and play. Well, Job's the piece on the board. I don't want that job. I don't want that job. Like, God says, you know what, Satan's going to attack you because I got something I want to show you. Like, well, how bad is it going to get? So God opens this up for Satan to be able to touch Job. He just can't take his life. Don't take his life. But yeah, go ahead. So Job ends up becoming one of the most tragic and most uplifting stories in all of Scripture. 42 chapters of, oh my goodness, that's all you're reading here. Job's his cattle were stolen by the Sabean army and his servants were killed. A fire comes and kills his sheep and more of his servants. The Chaldean army comes in and takes his camels and kills the servants that were caring for his camels. A great wind comes through and causes the house to fall down that all his children were in, and all his children die. Right there, it gets real personal. Like, okay, that's heavy stuff. And then Satan brings about more turmoil. Job is struck with boils from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. And the Bible records that he's sitting there with a piece of broken pottery, just trying to break those boils open to provide some relief because of the pain. And then to add insult to injury, Job's friends hear of the situation and they make a journey to comfort him. And that's when the turmoil really sets in. Yeah, I got boils. Yeah, I lost my kids. Yeah, all my servants are dead. My cattle's gone, sheep gone, everything's gone. I've lost everything. And then the friends come in to comfort him. Look what it says here. This tells you how bad this is. Look at Job chapter 2 and verse 12. Speaking of his friends. And when they raised their eyes from afar off and did not recognize him, they lifted their voice and wept. Each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head towards heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. Job's friends didn't even recognize him. How bad is that? That's a lot of suffering that Job is going through. They don't even recognize him, and for a week, no one says a word. You're just watching this guy just bawl. Like, what do you say? I don't know. Look at him. This guy's going through a lot. So for a week, they don't say a word to him. Then after the 7 days were over, his friends begin to voice their opinion of why Job must be going through all of this. And that's so helpful when your friends have an opinion of why you are suffering. So each friend takes their turn at giving Job their opinion of his situation. So let's walk through the wisdom of his friends. Eliphaz is the first one. Look at Job chapter 5 and verse 17. Behold, happy is the man whom God corrects. Therefore, do not despise the chastening of the Almighty, for he bruises, but he binds up, he wounds, but his hands make whole. His friend Eliphaz assumes that God's just chastening Job or correcting Job. Yeah, you must have messed up, Job. That's what's going on. You messed up. he sends Job this message that you must have done something that was really out of line, Job. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going through this. Now, at the very beginning of Job, we saw that God says Job was an upright man. And when God is talking to Satan, he says, Job is an upright man. Now, Eliphaz comes in and like, something's wrong with you, Job. God's getting you. I don't know what you did, but you messed up because he's correcting you. Here, Job defends himself and tells all his friends that he's kept his life in a manner that is pleasing to God. I have not done anything wrong. I've been living with integrity. So his next friend takes the mic. Like, Eliphaz, sit down for a second. I got something to say to Job too. Here comes more of that comfort. Bildad, that's this guy's name. He shows up to talk to Job, chapter 8 and verse 3. Does God subvert judgment, or does the Almighty pervert justice? Jump down to verse 5. If you would earnestly seek God and make your supplication to the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would awake for you and prosper your rightful dwelling place. God does not pervert justice. You need to repent, Job. I don't know what you did, but you messed up. You need to repent. If you were really seeking God, if you were really pure and upright, then he would bless you. The fact that you're not being blessed must be the fact that you're not what you say you are, Job. You think you're pure and upright. This isn't exactly the kind of encouragement Job was needing at the time, but sometimes it's good to have those friends that just kind of, salt in the wound kind of thing. So remember, Job hasn't done anything wrong at this point. God says Job's doing a great job, but Job is suffering. He is suffering. He's trying to figure out why God would allow this, even though he's remained upright and faithful the entire time. Like, yeah, I'm suffering. What did you do, Job? I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything wrong. He took your kids. Don't tell me you didn't do anything wrong. You're sitting here with boils from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. Don't tell us you didn't do anything wrong, Job. And Job is just like, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why I'm suffering, but I didn't do anything wrong. And because he's questioning God, like, God, I don't know why I'm going through this. I didn't do anything wrong. But because he starts questioning God, his friend Zophar steps in to voice his opinion. So here's the next friend, another one, Zophar. Job chapter 11 and verse 3. Should your empty talk make men hold their peace? And when you mock, should no one rebuke you? For you have said, my doctrine is pure, and I'm clean in your eyes. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips against you, that he would show you the secrets of wisdom, for they would double your prudence. Know therefore that God exacts from you less than your iniquity deserves. That's really kind. Thank you so much. You question God. God has taken less from you than your sin deserves, Job. Like, I've lost everything. I've lost everything. I'm sitting here suffering, and Zophar shows up and is like, yep, and God hasn't begun to deal with you yet. He's taken less than you deserve. Like, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, all three of you. Thank you so much for the blessing you are in my life. Now I'm suffering on a whole nother level. On top of everything else that's going wrong in Job's life, his friends show up and tell him that it's his fault and he should have gotten worse. Like, thank you guys. Later on in the book, we see that Eliphaz says that Job must not really fear God at all. Bildad says God punishes the wicked, and that must be you, because you are seriously being punished. And then Zophar reminds Job that the wicked will suffer. These three friends tear Job down for 32 chapters of the book of Job. Like, you might want to check into different friends. They sat there for 7 days watching you cry. They didn't even recognize you. I'm like, I think we know why, Job. You're a horrible person. And God must be getting you. Otherwise, why? Why would you be going through this? And Job defends himself over and over and over again through those 32 chapters. He reminds his friends that he is righteous, and he truly remained righteous through it all. The Bible even says in all of this, Job did not sin. He kept the course. He was doing what was right. He insists that he is innocent in spite of their accusations. I know what you guys are saying, but I have remained innocent through this. But Job finally does get to the point where he actually has an unhealthy outlook on his situation, which, by the way, I think all of us would after a while. Like, I don't get it. I'm still suffering. He's exhausted and he's had enough. Here he is speaking to God. Look at Job chapter 13 and verse 23. How many are my iniquities and sins? Make me know my transgression and my sin. Why do you hide your face and regard me as your enemy? Talking to God. What's going on, God? Go ahead and show me what I did wrong. Please, show me what I did wrong. We know behind the scenes details of Job's story because we were there for that first chapter. You know, when Satan and God are talking, we do see what's going on here. We know that Satan was attacking Job and God was still loving him and he was in complete control the whole time. All Job knew was the circumstances had turned ugly real quick. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it's getting rough. He now sees himself as someone that God regards as his enemy. For some reason, you made me your enemy, God, and I don't know why. He knows that he's been faithful to God, and he seriously desires to plead his case before God. If I could just get there and talk to God face to face. Let's look a little bit at that conversation in chapter 23 and verse 2. Even today my complaint is bitter. My hand is listless because of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat. I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in his great power? No, but he would take note of me. Job, are you all right? Yeah, it's just if I could talk to God. If I could get to where he's sitting, I would talk to him. And would he contend with me? No. He would take note of me because I've got a lot to say. I'm suffering a lot and I don't know why. All Job wants is answers to why his situation is so miserable when he has been so faithful. And that brings us to the voice of reason in the book of Job. We're finally to the voice of reason. A young man named Elihu steps onto the pages and he's heard enough. There's 4 friends here, not 3. You've got those other 3. Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar, they've all shared their blessing with Job already. And now you've got Elihu that's standing there the whole time listening to all of this, and he's heard enough. He's done. Look at Elihu here. He's going to step up and say something in Job chapter 32 in verse 2. Then the wrath of Elihu, the son of Barashel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, was aroused against Job. His wrath was aroused because he justified himself rather than God. Also against his 3 friends, his wrath was aroused because they had found no answer and yet had condemned Job. Now because they were years older than he, Elihu had waited to speak to Job. So Elihu's the youngest guy in this scenario here. He's the young one. He's younger than all the others, and he was hoping that their age would have provided Job with some kind of wisdom. You know, you 3 are older. There's got to be wisdom there. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to let you guys talk. I let Job hear some wisdom. So he remained silent until he couldn't hold it in any longer. Elihu was angry because of how unhealthy this whole situation had become. He's listening to 32 chapters worth of great advice and just putting down Job constantly, like, you guys don't know what's going on and you keep condemning him. He's listening to this whole thing. And he's about to release a 6-chapter speech on what the proper outlook should be. Elihu, like, all right, I'm going to take 6 chapters for myself. I'm going to preach a little sermon to you. Look at chapter 33 and verse 1. Here's the beginning of this. But please, Job, hear my speech and listen to all my words. Now I open my mouth, my tongue speaks in my mouth. My words come from an upright heart. My lips utter pure knowledge. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. If you can answer me, set your words in order before me. Take your stand. Truly, I am your spokesman before God. I also have been formed out of clay. So Elihu starts out by telling Job the heart behind his words, the words that he's about to say. Hey, Job, before I start preaching, I want you to know the heart behind what I'm about to say. He says that his words come from an upright heart. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to condemn you. But I want you to know that I really am seeking to help you here. He mentions that God is his creator and his very life comes by the breath of God. Then he shows the humility that Job needed to see this whole time. He's been missing out on with the other friends. He shows a humility that Job needs to see in order to understand that his speech is not coming from a place of arrogance, but a place of humility. He says, I have also been formed out of clay. I don't see myself above you, Job. I've also been formed out of clay. He's letting Job know that they're equal. And he's about to speak as Job's equal. I might be younger, but we're in the same boat, Job. The Almighty created you just like the Almighty created me. I was formed out of clay just like you were formed out of clay. So I'm not trying to be arrogant here. Remember, it said the wrath of Elihu rose up against Job because he justified himself rather than God. This is the essence of Job or Elihu's entire speech. You keep telling us how innocent you are, Job, and I'm not questioning that. But why aren't you talking about him? Why are you constantly justifying yourself, but why aren't you justifying God? Where's that at? This is the lesson God was trying to teach Job through the entire book. Job needed to learn this. So a lot of times people say, look, God was playing games with Job. Job is the pawn on the board, and God's like, all right, Satan, you make your move, and then I'll make my move, and let's play. And he's just going to have to be the beneficiary of our game here. That's not what's going on. Satan says he would curse you to your face if you take all the blessings away, and God says, take them away. Go ahead and take them away. I told you he's an upright man. So is Job just the consequence of God trying to prove something to Satan? Nope. There's something that Job needs to learn. Job has to learn this too. So God's helping Job throughout this whole book. He's also revealing a lot about these three friends of Job. And then the young guy shows up and he's like, listen to the young guy. Listen to the kid. Something the kid has to say, and I want you to hear this. So this entire lesson is being laid out through the whole book of Job. We're reading it like, God, why are you doing this? Well, don't worry, you're not the first one to ask that question. Job was also asking that question. Why, God, why? Why am I suffering? So let's read a little farther here. Job chapter 33 and verse 8. Elihu's continuing his speech here. Surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard the sound of your words saying, I am pure, without transgression. I am innocent, and there is no iniquity in me. Yet he finds occasion against me. He counts me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks. He watches all my paths. Look, in this you are not righteous. I will answer you, for God is greater than man. Elihu's about to lay out a sermon that we've all needed to hear at one time or another in our lives, and maybe we need to hear it right now. Maybe we should all just, focus on this right here, right now. Maybe we need it right now. He reminds Job that there are times when God is going to allow suffering. God has to allow suffering. Sometimes it's allowed because people have sinned and brought it upon themselves. That was a bad call, and now you have to face the consequences of that. Sometimes the sin of others affects the innocent, and God still uses it, and he works that together for good also. He can do that. And sometimes a broken world just behaves like a broken world. Sometimes in our fallen state, bad things happen to good people. God's not causing it, but he is allowing it to happen within our dominion. Remember, he gave us dominion, and we're really bad at managing this. We really do need God. But sometimes bad things happen to one another, and it's not God causing it. He allows us to move within our own dominion. And then Elihu continues to preach. Look at chapter 34 and verse 12. Surely God will never do wickedly, nor will the Almighty pervert justice. Who gave him charge over the earth, or who appointed him over the whole world? Elihu's telling Job not to forget the character of God. In all your suffering, in all your questioning, Please don't forget the character of God in all of this. I know you're hurting, Job. I know you have questions, but don't forget about the character of our God. Through all of your suffering, through all of your questions, don't dismiss his character. He cannot do wickedly. He will not pervert justice, and there is none above him. Who put him in charge? Nobody, Job. Nobody put God in charge. God's in charge. He is supreme. God is, go up the ladder as high as you want to. When you hit something, that's the end, and that's God. Nobody's higher than him. He tells him of the goodness of God in a way that we rarely think of. And I want everybody to let these next two verses sink in here. The first time I read these verses, I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Everybody think about it that way. Let's look at Job chapter 34 and verse 14. If he should set his heart on it, if he should gather to himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh would perish together, and man would return to dust. What? Do what? The question is asked, do you really understand how constant God's love is, Job? Do you really see this? If he were to withdraw himself from us, we would perish. We really need him. If he says, you know what? I'm not going to be involved at all anymore. I'm just going to withdraw myself from all of that. We would implode. We really do need God. And Elihu's like, hey, the character of God that I'm talking about, do you realize that if he just wanted to, if he set his heart on it and said, you know what? I'm going to be all by myself now. I'm not going to deal with that anymore. Man would return to dust. We would be nothing. We need him, Job. We need him. God refuses to leave us. He's always loving. He cares about the smallest details of our lives. The fact that we're still here is evidence of itself that God loves us. Why are you still breathing? Because God's still there. Because if God wasn't there, you wouldn't be breathing. Elihu's really, really coming in strong here. Job, you know it, you know it, you know it. And as you're questioning God and thinking you're his enemy and starting to think about his character in a negative way, let me remind you, he's still here. You know why I know he's still here? Because you're still here. He's still present. He didn't leave you. He didn't walk away from you. Job has just gotten to the point where he's suffering. His suffering has become more of a focus than the character of his God. And by the way, that happens a lot to us. We do get there at times where we question God and say, hey, my suffering's more of my focus than your character. And now I'm starting to question your character because of my suffering. Job's three friends have rebuked him for being wicked when he was not wicked. Elihu's telling him to protect himself before his thoughts turn against his creator. Hey, before you get down that dark path that these other three guys are kind of shoving you into here, I want you to protect yourself from those thoughts. Look at chapter 36 and verse 21. Take heed, do not turn to iniquity, for you have chosen this rather than affliction. Behold, God is exalted by his power. Who teaches like him? Who has assigned him in his way, or who has said, you have done wrong? Remember to magnify his work of which men have sung. Elihu is not assuming that Job did something to deserve this. He's not condemning Job like his other three friends have done. You know, thanks guys, that did not help. He's not doing what they did. He's basing everything he's saying on words that he heard Job say personally. I heard you say this, Job. I heard it, and I'm warning you of the dangers of thinking that way. Don't forget about the character of our God, because it's not going to change. It's not going to change. After Elihu presents this 6-chapter sermon, God does end up speaking to Job, and Job listens. God helps Job see that there are many things that he cannot understand. Job, there's so much you don't understand. At one point he says, where were you when I made the stars? Right? Well, I wasn't born yet. Okay. Who tells the ocean how far it can come out up to land? Well, I guess it's you. Do you know how to do that? No, I don't know how to do that. There's so many things you don't understand, Job. There's so many things you don't understand. And he reminds Job to trust him. I will not do wrong. God cannot do wrong. And at the end of the book of Job, we see Job's heart. Look at Job chapter 42. See, I told you we had 42 chapters. We're making it. It's a real quick book. Real quick book. Unless you read it, then it might take longer. Let's look at Job chapter 42 in verse 1. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. Job tells God that in his suffering, he has said things without understanding. God, I have said things I probably shouldn't have said. In my suffering, I've looked at my circumstances and I didn't understand what I was saying. I said things I didn't even comprehend, God, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I allowed my pain to affect the way I saw you. And he asked God to forgive him for allowing that to happen. God does end up rebuking Job's 3 friends, but there's one friend God does not rebuke. The kid. Good job, kid. Good job. The old guys that were supposed to have all that wisdom spoke nonsense to Job and made him feel so low. And then the kid shows up and he says, I can't take it anymore. So God does end up rebuking 3 of the 4 friends. Elihu was used to turn Job's heart to God in the middle of suffering. And Job started investing himself in the life of others. Look at Job chapter 42 and verse 10. And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. Job began to understand that his friends were the ones that were lacking. Wait, but you lost all your friend and all your servants and your cattle and your kids and your health. You've lost it all. Who's lacking? Those 3 guys are. They're missing the whole thing. They don't understand. So Job decides to pray for his friends. Satan loves to use suffering because it typically becomes our focus. We start focusing on our suffering a lot. God used Elihu to bring Satan's argument right to the heart of Job. So let's look at Satan's argument one more time. Let's take a look at this. And God takes Elihu to bring up Satan's whole case. Satan says, here's my case, God. And God says, hold on, I've got a good lawyer. Let's let the kid take the stand. Look at this. Look at Satan's argument again. Job chapter 1 and verse 9. So Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Verse 11. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Job only serves you because everything's going his way, God. And God uses Elihu to present this question to Job. And the question is this: why do you serve him? Why do you serve God? Why, Job? Why do you serve him? Do we serve God because he protects us? Do we serve him because he blesses us? If so, we're going to stop serving him when those things seem to go away. But that's what's going to happen. Like, God doesn't care, I don't care. That's all that'll happen. Do we serve him because we know we're supposed to? So we actually do it out of a sense of obligation? Like he said I had to, so I guess I have to. Do we do it out of a sense of obligation? Many people say that they're tired of being kind to people because they just give and give and give and they get nothing in return, so they just want to stop. I've been there. Like, I'm tired of being nice. It doesn't pay off. I keep giving and giving and giving, and people are like, yeah, you should have given more. Like, All right, now it's on. I don't want to be nice anymore. I don't want to give anymore. I've been there myself. If we're serving to get something in return, we're going to get exhausted. And by the way, make it a bumper sticker or something, just so you can see it all the time. If you give to get something in return, you will eventually become exhausted. With people, the return will never match the service. And with God, the service will always fade in the light of the return. Focus on that. I keep doing good to people and they don't give anything back. Yep, because the return will never match the service with mankind. Look at the service God did for you. Look at the service God did for all of mankind. What's the return look like? Doesn't match the service. Doesn't match the service. But with God, the service will always fade in light of the return. Why do you love him? Why do you serve him? Let's take a few minutes and step out of our situation and put ourselves into Job's situation. Everybody ready? All you got to do is sign here, and you get to play his story out for a little while. Let's just go ahead and put ourselves into his scenario for a second. If this story was written about you, would it have ended differently? If Satan were to tell God that if he took everything we had away and we would curse him to his face, would he be right? Would he be right? Do we only enjoy our relationship with God in the good times and then we question him in the bad times? These are just questions we can think about personally. God uses Elihu to present a very powerful question to every person here. Have you considered the wonder of our God? Just look at the heavens. Look up. Who made that? How did he do it? Where were you when it was made? What if God steps out for a second? Are you okay with that? Oh, no. Please don't let him step out for even 1 second. Why? Because we would all return to dust. Okay, so you do see kind of some value there in who he is? The truth is incredible, and there is a truth that surpasses intellectual understanding, and that's where faith comes in. That's where faith comes in. I may not understand why I'm going through what I'm going through right now, but I know God's still here. How do you know that? Because I'm still here. I'm still here. So he's still here. And I can't forget about his character. Elihu helps Job get back to one of the healthiest statements Job says in the book of Job, all the way back in chapter 13 and verse 15. Look at what Job says. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Early in the book, Job says, even if he were to take my life, I will trust him because of his character. And by the time you get farther in the book of Job, Job's like, if I could just talk to God, man. And Elihu's like, hold on. Did you forget? Did you forget about him? He's still the same God, Job. He hasn't changed. When suffering comes, we can get caught into a vortex of self-absorption, whether we mean to or not. It happens to us. Here's the proof. We allow life to get so busy around us that God becomes a luxury rather than a necessity. Life's going good. Then a problem comes like, okay, God, I need you. I need you now. Like, you needed me. You needed me the whole time. You just got focused on the blessing that you forgot the blesser. I became a luxury rather than a necessity. It's nice that he's there, but we overlook his value. We want to grow in him when things get rough, and we assume we already have when things are good. Are you still working on that relationship with God? Are you still growing in that? Oh, not right now. Things are going great. Things are going just fine. So you've arrived? I think so. I think maybe I've arrived. Why aren't you studying? Why aren't you growing? Why aren't you learning? Things are going good. I really don't continue to grow when things are good because you feel like you've already achieved that. When sin's actions affect us, we start questioning God's actions. We look at the piece of God's character and we question why that piece is not benefiting us. We're very self-focused. Elihu steps in to protect Job from getting sucked into that vortex of self-absorption. Though he slays you, you must trust him because he hasn't changed, Job. Still the same God. Elihu points out that Job has been justifying his own innocence and neglecting to justify the innocence of his God. You missed it, Job. You missed it. Yeah, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but while you're declaring how innocent you are, you forgot to declare how innocent he is. Yeah, you're suffering. He's going to be with you. He's going to help you through this. He didn't cause it. He didn't do it. He allowed it. Of course he allowed it, but he didn't do it to you. And you forgot his character through this. You are innocent, Job, but he is too, and you can't forget that. In the good times and in the bad times, we cannot forget about how loving, how good, and how righteous our God is. He's good, and he's not going to change. Always keep him as your focus. And don't forget who he is in the good times and in the bad times. Remember, God's still there. How do you know? You're still there. You're still there. And if he would have stepped out for 1 second, you wouldn't be here. So he's still there. So if you ever want evidence of whether God left you or not, go look in the mirror. You're not looking at God, but you're looking at the results that there is a God. God's still here. Yeah, the suffering's happening, but God hasn't walked away from me. Keep your focus where it needs to be. The Sermon of Elihu is a powerful sermon. Powerful, powerful sermon. And we all need to apply it to our lives from time to time. He's still good. He's still with you. Don't forget, though he slays you, still trust him.